What's up? What's up, everybody? Hobby with Cage, episode 69. Save the dad jokes. It's late. My son's already asleep. Otherwise, he'd be making a joke about this one. Fun little title. What can be learned from fantasy drafts? What can we take from the fantasy drafts that have been going on and utilize it in the hobby? Let's start off. I haven't done fantasy football in a very long time. Years it's been. I had a Luca Nation league last year, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I didn't want to win. It's one of those things where it's your league, you can't really win it. So I did good enough to just be involved and not actually take the crown. But I had two fantasy drafts in the last two nights, and that's why this episode's coming to you a little bit late. I did a draft today live with Ian. Did a team. First things first, if you're in a fantasy league, thank your commissioner, because that's a thankless job. I mean, we almost had a big fight in today's draft where, there were when can you trade until, when's a trade deadline, how do you veto a trade, why is this rule like that? I mean, you name it. The commissioner, booked a room for us, got some food, and, set it up, and, drove people there. I mean, it's a thankless thing. But then on the other end, you got some commissioners who are making trades that I think are, a little unfair. Let's, I'm in a hobby fantasy league, which I'm sure we'll do some content about. I'll tell you about my team. Different kind of league, man. Different kind of league. 2 quarterbacks, 10 teams, 2 quarterbacks. Everybody has to start 2 quarterbacks. And then you got like 3 wide receivers plus 2 flex. But it was just a different league, and it was an auction. It was very weird. People spending their money, running out of money, just pretty crazy. I'm sitting here after 2 days of different drafts, live and in person, standard, PPR, you name it, and there's a lot of correlations between fantasy drafts and the hobby. One, there's obviously many different ways of doing it. You can be a vintage collector. You could be a modern collector. You could be ultra modern. There's no wrong way to do it. And I'm sure that, everybody has their favorite. I was a fan of the auction draft. I think I probably should have done a little more research. And there is another little lesson to be learned there. You don't just dive in. You don't just jump in. Because I sat down in front of the computer not even realizing it was draft day. It's an auction. I've never done one before. I didn't even know how much money the team, gets. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're paying $65 out of your $200 bankroll for Christian McCaffrey. And, your quarterbacks end up being, Brock Purdy and, Sam Howell. It's sort of the same thing, right? Before you do anything in the hobby, you should be doing some research, figure out what it is that, you want to do, figure out what you want to do in the hobby. But the biggest thing I see from fantasy drafts, sports in general, it's just how things change, how tastes change, and how the shiny new toy is sometimes overvalued. And look, it's a little different fantasy. Bijan Robinson may turn out to be the greatest fantasy player on earth. But you don't know. He's still being drafted in the first half of the first round in a lot of drafts. And that's potential. And I thought about that after he was drafted early in both of the leagues that I was in. I said, this is the hobby. People want to pay extra and put a premium on potential. They want to be the ones who, call it out, want to be right, and get there first and, get there early. But if you're paying first round prices for that running back, is it really, are you there early? Are you getting a bargain? Can there really only be downside there? If you're drafting this rookie running back who has never even played in the NFL at the 3rd, 4th, 5th position, like, isn't that the ceiling for him? I mean, even if he, comes out and is a stud, Is he going to have more points than, say, a Justin Jefferson or a Christian McCaffrey? Probably not. So I thought about that for a second. I said, you draft somebody in the second, third round and they have first round production. Great. You've got extra value. It's sort of the same thing as, it doesn't have to be football. It's sort of the same thing as what we're seeing with a lot of these young players. Justin Herbert, great example, right? I mean, people paid so much money for his stuff. And it was almost like right out of the gate, you have an MVP priced in. You have a championship or playoff run, you name it, priced in. And if it doesn't happen, you only have one place to go. It's down. If it does happen, it's already priced in. Like, you're already paying, championship prices for this, for the cards. Luka, another great example. Trae Young, forget about it. Zion, Ja, all these, young players. The interesting thing about it is, if we're paying so much, we're paying a premium for these guys, look what winds up happening. A lot of them don't pan out, right? Look what Wander Franco cards. I mean, obviously that's off the field, right? And even if they do, because so much money is being paid for these cards, even if they have, great success, it just kind of puts the card at the value you've already paid for it. Anyway, it's just one of those things. I thought to myself, wow, this was, it's interesting, right? Like, it was one thing to be drafting Bijan Robinson in the second round, a month ago, and hopefully he has first round production. But if you're paying $1 million for a Jason Dominguez card, you're just getting back to that value because he's hit 3 home runs in his first 5 games now, which leads me to my next statement, my clippable content. Sell you damn Jason Dominguez cards. I love it. He's going to be a great Yankee. The kid is awesome. But wow, he's got some hype on him right now. I actually heard somebody at the fantasy draft today say that if he does this over the course of a season, he'll hit 100 home runs. They did the math. He said, all right, it's 3 home runs in 5 games, 162 game season. That's 33 times 3, and that's 100 home runs. So next year, expect him to play 162 games and hit 100 home runs. And if he does that, his cards will probably go up in value, but I don't think that's how it actually works. It's one of those guys, he hits 2 home runs in opening day, and somebody says, that guy's on pace for 320 home runs. Again, not how it works. Sell your stuff. Sell now. Get whatever you can. It's just fun stuff, right? I mean, it's just one of those things you think about with the hobby. And I don't know when it really turned into that. I guess it's sort of, in some regard, always been that way, right? Everybody wants to get their rookie. Everybody wants to, get in early. Everybody wants their guy. I did it, in the 80s. I did it in I like Shaquille O'Neal in the early 90s. When his stuff came out, I collected a lot of Shaquille O'Neal cards. But more often than not, it doesn't pan out. It just doesn't, because, there are only a handful of players in each decade, in each generation, that, turn into those guys that are collectible over time. And if you think about it, right, I mean, you can go through the 80s, I can probably name you, 10 or 20 guys. But if you go through, through what people are investing in baseball and basketball now, there are 20 guys from the last 2 years. That's not going to remain that way. That's the fun stuff. That's the prospecting side. That's the, just the kind of what's on the top of my brain from fantasy. The other stuff that I was thinking about today was, Darren Ravel put the additional article out about, the jersey, the Jordan jersey, the fraud, all that stuff that's going on there. And I'd love to hear from you guys. I wonder whether or not the news stuff, even my own, weekly news, I thought it was a cool idea, like very easy, clippable content. I wonder if it does us a disservice. If you guys pause this episode for a second and go to Instagram, what you're going to see is probably every third post on your feed has a little breaking news scroll. Breaking news, breaking news. And if every breaking news story is about fraud, and the other 2/3 are about how you should have seen the fraud and I saw the fraud and haha, gotcha, the gotchas, and hey, your favorite influencers all suck. And 1 in 10 posts are about cards. Do we need to stop that cycle somehow? Do I need to? And here's where I'd love to hear your comments. Do I need to stop doing hobby news? Do we need to stop putting that stuff out there? Because no one's putting stuff about cards. I did my best this week. I got a bunch of DMs like, how come you didn't cover the card porn stuff more? How come it was the lead story? I mean, you go ahead and read Darren Ravel's post, which is what I said. But I really did try to focus on card sales. The Wembanyama sale, the Topps, Cosmic Chrome that came out. The Bronny James that's coming out at the end of the week. And I think I'm going to have to do a little bit better in my own content. Maybe not just in the news, maybe in this. Maybe it's got to be like a Cage's Corner, Cage's Card Corner, the Card Corner, whatever we'll call it, where, I'm doing 3-4 episodes a week. Maybe 5 minutes of that are going to be dedicated to cards. I mean, can you believe that I have to actually say that I'm going to have to dedicate a portion of my card content to cards? It's interesting, right? But maybe it's hey, these are what I bought this week, almost like mail day stuff. Hey, here's what I'm selling, and here's why. Here's what I listed. Here's what sold for last week. Here's my thought process as to why this is selling this week and why it's not. I think maybe that's probably helpful too. Maybe it balances the stuff out. You guys let me know what you think. I'm going to do that. Now, I'm also going to speak for a couple minutes to, some folks that are out there who I've gotten DMs from in the past week since the story broke and since kind of the narrative in the hobby has kind of turned, even more south. I've got a lot of DMs from people thinking about just leaving, about just selling everything and leaving. And it reminds me of a lot of messages I got last year when the market, kind of took a real downturn from people who were, who might have bought in at highs and, were underwater. Same kind of like negative feeling, negative outlook on the space. I would tell you, just like I said last year, if you're having those thoughts, you really should actually look into potentially maybe moving your money out. And here's why. I mean, the hobby for me is an escape. You know what I mean? I have, a 9 to 5, which I wish ended at 5 and started at 9, but I have a 9 to 5, and that's work. That's stress. I have a family, kids, you name it. That's stress. I try to, buy some cards, buy some silly cards, collect my Goonies stuff and, my other, nonsense, because it's an escape. It is an escape from the drama. It's an escape from the stress. It's an escape from the daily grind. And if the hobby, if you're collecting, if your time in this space is actually causing you stress and you're looking to escape from that instead of it being where you are going to escape, maybe you need to step away. And I've told probably a half dozen people that this week. I know that doesn't go with the narrative of we're going to 10x the hobby, because it doesn't 10x the hobby to tell people to leave. But, maybe stepping away is a good thing. And I will tell you that is kind of the last little note that I have. I missed the hobby while I was on vacation. I'll say it again. I was away. I was in Disney World with the family. Didn't really have time to, go through all of the posts and read the stuff. I buy cards. I won 2 auctions, believe it or not. I won an auction from Golden and I won an auction from SCP auctions while I was away. I told you guys about the Golden one. That was the Wilt. I won an autograph from SCP also. But I missed the hobby. I was, I answered the DMs, but I wasn't immersed in it. I wasn't, I didn't buy too many cards. I got a bunch waiting for me on my LCS when I finally get there, probably on Friday, to pick up and buy. But one of the things I was looking forward to was, this is going to sound nuts, my morning commute to work today. because I have an hour train ride into the city where it's just, let's catch up on the hobby. Let's see what's going on out there. Let's check hobby Twitter. Let's check hobby IG. Let's check the instant messages, the direct messages. Let's respond. Let's see what's going on. And it's great because, I don't have to think about anything else. I'm just thinking about the hobby. I really was looking forward to that. And I think part of it was because I had stepped away. I was away for a week and a half and wasn't really involved. I wasn't at a show. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And, it's like the absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? And maybe some of the folks who send me those messages, maybe they're just, every time they open up IG or every time they open up Twitter or wherever they get their stuff from, they're just hit with a constant barrage of negative stuff. And I'm not saying, we got to prop up the positivity. We got to have the hobby optimism. No. Right now, the space is in an interesting place. It just is. We have, the two manufacturers embroiled in lawsuits. We have players associations, taking away, companies' ability to do stuff. We have fraud running rampant in all different aspects of the hobby. We have cards being cleaned. We have cards grading 4s and 5s in one place and the same cards becoming 9s, 9 5s and 10s in other places. It is, to say the least, it is an interesting time in the hobby. It wouldn't be the worst thing to, turn off the screen for a minute and see whether or not you miss it the way that I missed it while I was on vacation, and maybe come back with a renewed focus on what it is that drew you back, what it was that you missed, what it was that, that you're enjoying about it. We talked about that in our last episode. I don't want to, get too much into it, but I did get a lot of messages, more than I was expecting after the last episode, where I asked, we're still having fun with cards, and a lot of people answered that they weren't. And that's a little sad because this it's a hobby, right? And once it becomes more than that, once it becomes actually stressful for you, that's not a good thing. And that's not saying to the folks who sent me messages that there's anything wrong with you coming to terms with the fact that it is stressing you out. People have spent a lot of money, a lot of time. Some people have fell victim to scams. Some people just had really high hopes for the space, and have seen it turn into something different than what they thought it was. For most of you, what I would say is I think a lot of the space is going to change still. It's changed significantly last year, but I think in the next year or two, it's going to continue to evolve and change. There will always be the flippers and that kind of stuff. But I think as the hobby evolves and we get some more clarity on, who is manufacturing what, what's being done and all that fun stuff, I think the pendulum will swing back to, collecting, and really just enjoying the cards for what they are. And when it's not buying something today and selling it tomorrow for significantly more money, or selling it in a week for more money, I think a lot of the folks who came in will just as quickly leave. A lot of them already have. And maybe that'll be when you come back in and enjoy it again. I don't know what the answer is on that front. I will tell you one suggestion I made to somebody who gave me their whole history. He told me, they were a collector in the 80s and 90s, and they came in, spent a lot of money, bought a lot of what they called the wrong things, and had some bad grading experiences, and they've taken some losses on money. And this, if it sounds like you, here's the suggestion I gave them. It's something I did at a recent show. I went to the East Coast National. Go to a show, go to a store, go on eBay, and before you do that, make a list of the cards that you loved having as a kid but don't have anymore. If you were the same age as me, you loved like 1990, 293 Fleer Ultra when it came out. It was a cool Shaq product, right? With Alonzo Mourning, you had like the Rejectors and the all-rookie team, and Hoops had Magic's all-rookies. There were cool draft cards for Shaq. There were just cool cards. And I remember there were 4 or 5 that were too expensive for me as a kid. Chris Webber ones. I showed the head of the class card, which was numbered, that had the top 6 draft picks on the card, 3 on the front, 3 on the back. Go to shows and look for those cards. Don't look for them to grade, right? Put them in a binder, and it doesn't have to be this huge, thick thing, Make a couple page binder, buy 30 cards, buy 40 cards, put a set together that was a cool set that you built as a kid. I remember my favorite set to put together in basketball was the Skybox draft picks, and I don't know if I could still do it, as well as I did. I don't know if I still know it the way that I knew it before, but like the Skybox draft picks, I remember the 92-93 set was this weird looking like gold box on the card. I don't know why they did that. Like it's the Shaq set, and I remember putting it together. I think I sold it. I think I probably tried to grade some of them, and I probably sold like the rest of them. Or I don't know exactly, what wound up happening. But I remember at one point in time, I was able to do the entire draft class. I remember that 92 draft was awesome because I became a Latrell Sprewell fan. I thought he was great. I was hoping the Knicks would draft him at 20, and I'm pretty sure they took Hubert Davis at 20 instead of taking Latrell Sprewell, who I think went at 24. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he was at Alabama. It wasn't a huge basketball school at the time. But I remember, talking to somebody, this was maybe last year, he was at the National, and, obviously people remember the top. People remember like Shaq, Mourning, Leitner, but they forget like Jim Jackson. And that was a cool set too, because Jim Jackson came out, I think it was Ohio State maybe, but he didn't play the first year. So like his card was actually released later, and you could add it to the set. He had LaFonso Ellis. He played at Notre Dame. I think he was the 5th pick. And people know him because he was in the Precious Metals, so he's got a cool card in there. Tom Gugliotta was the 6th pick. He played for Washington with the Bullets at the time. I met him on a family vacation. I forget if it was St. Thomas, St. Martin. He was like buying jewelry in a store. It was this huge, tall guy. And I was like, we know who he is, because I had a Skybox draft card. And Walt Williams and Todd Day. Todd Day came out of Arkansas. He was on the Bucks. Clarence Weatherspoon, the Spoon Man, played for the Sixers. He was going to be the next, Charles Barkley. Didn't pan out. But I had a bunch of Clarence Weatherspoon cards. And he had Adam Keefe and Robert Horry and Harold Miner, the baby Jordan out of USC. And I remember these guys because I remember putting the set together. I remember, building that draft pick set. And I did it again for, the year after, 93, 94, that had, your Weber and Sean Bradley and Anthony Hardaway, Penny. And there are sets out there like that I know you're thinking of right now that you were building as a kid that you didn't get. You didn't have the money to buy the whole set. Well, they're at shows. They're on eBay. Go buy one of those, go put one of those sets together. Figure out the one that works for you. That doesn't have to be PMG Reds, guys. I'm not telling you go out there and spend a ton of money. As a matter of fact, one of the best things that I did at the East Coast National was I stood at somebody's binder for like an hour, yanking out Latrell Sprewell cards and Drew Bledsoe cards and cool 90s inserts. And I came home, I had spent like $68, and it was one of the most fun hours that I had ever had. I don't know if any of them are gradable, and I don't care, And my last grading of Drew Bledsoe's, if that's any kind of an indication, I should never have graded any of them. But it just goes to show you, when I was buying cards in the 90s before there was grading, I wasn't exactly looking at how great a condition it was. It was just I wanted to have it. Just being able to find one at a card show and then go ahead and pick it up. But yeah, I mean, listen, that's my 25-minute spiel. This was kind of all over the place. It's late. I'm tired. I gotta get ready for work tomorrow. Make sure the kids are in bed and make lunches and snacks. But everything in this one, from what can be learned in a fantasy draft, how you can extrapolate that out into into the hobby. Maybe don't overpay for the young shiny new star. I forgot to layer in that. A couple years ago's shiny star is a forgotten player. I mean, Derrick Henry I remember giving Derrick Henry as a tip. He's going to rush for 2,000 yards. He's like a stud, you name it. Now, I think somebody picked him in the third round, and folks like, what a reach, Derrick Henry. He's going to be 30. He's on the downhill, and part of the lesson, right? The other stuff. Listen, let me know whether or not we should be doing news. Let me know whether or not the news should stop for a while. Let me know whether or not you think I should add in kind of like a 5-minute Cages card corner, once a week. Maybe doing it on Fridays or something like that, where we talk about what I'm doing with my cards, what I'm buying, what I'm selling, why I'm buying it, why I'm selling it. If you guys want to see that kind of card content as part of my card content, I'd love to hear from you guys, because whatever you guys tell me, I'll do. I love reading the comments. Keep that up. And then, we talked about, folks who are not thrilled with the state of the hobby. I'm trying to, get everybody back into something that they loved and the reason why they were here. And you wound up hearing, the first 10 or 12 draft picks from the 92-93 draft that I only remember because of putting together the Skybox draft pick set. So I apologize for boring you guys with that one, but it's still up here in the brain. But anyway, guys, that's it. There's a fun one. That's episode 69. Do what you will. Can't believe I've done 69 of these episodes. We'll see you in a couple of days for episode 70. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.